Good morning. Um, so I'm going to start by saying that, as again, I've said in other videos that this has been um, just such a long time coming. It is really early. It's like almost 9:20, and I haven't really done much with myself. I just kind of got up maybe a couple of hours ago, and I wanted to say that it's always very difficult to know where to start. But I will say that I am going to first start by saying that just in the world, period, and this is something that you've heard and you know for yourself, this isn't like a light bulb moment for anybody or even for myself, that we are bombarded with so much information about relationships and who we are and all of those things. And so it's strange that we live in a world now that is very much confusing in terms of be yourself or keeping it real, and just there's just so much information and so many thoughts and opinions about who we should be, how we should think, how things should go. And it's confusing because when I think about relationships, men and women, information that we get, medicine, everything is so confusing. And it's hard to decipher what a lot of it is. And the reason why it's hard to decipher, in my opinion, is because we do live in a world that is very it's just strange. I don't want to say ambiguous, but it's just strange. So I wanted to start out by saying, because I started a video before this one, I had gotten a notification and it cut the video off. I want to always make sure that I talk about my experience and not try and blanket my experience on other people. And if I have an experience and you are in the same situation, there's a probability that I could say, don't do it because, and there's always an exception to almost every rule. And I always want to start by talking about who I am in the midst of a situation. And I'm going to say, growing up in this world, or in the United States, that when I was younger, we all know our history. We know that Native Americans were the first people, this is the Native Americans' home, the United States. We don't know what it would have been called if, we hadn't been, prior to the theft of their land. We know that it was colonized. We know that Africans were brought over to build the wealth of this nation for free. We also know that the history of people of color, and we also know about systematically how things were set up for us. The reason why I'm starting there is because this is how I had to come to the place that I am as a woman growing up. Now, this in my hair is a crochet. I do have hair. It is healthy. And I used to wear wigs when I was younger, and not as much as I wore weaves. And I guess you could say that this is a weave, so to speak, but it's the hair is it's like more of a kind of a kinky texture, and I don't wear it because normally I'm a braid person. I've always worn braids since maybe my early 20s, when I stopped wearing tracks and stuff. As a young girl, when in this country, we were always bombarded with photos and this image of the Caucasian hair and the lighter skin being something that was superior. And so, I grew up feeling some sort of type of way about who I was, which would be normal when you grow up in a culture that uh, allows beauty and everything about how you move in the world to be, I don't want to say compared to, but there's a standard, and it didn't look like me. And lifestyles didn't look like my lifestyle based on being someone of color. Kind of our culture being put behind the 8 ball. And of course, we fought our way out of a lot of it just off of our own sweat. And so part of me saying that is because I said I was going to be honest about how I grew into an understanding of who I was, all of the perfection and imperfection, and how I had to condition myself out of a lot of, how I had to condition myself out of a mindset in regards to how I feel about who I am as a Black woman. I'm 47 years old. I'll be 48 in September, which is next month on the 19th, and I have one adult son. And like a lot of people, I've had a very traumatic childhood. My introduction to men, Black men, those experiences shaped how I related to men, how I saw men, my mistrust for men. And this isn't a bash, I'm just meaning all of my experiences early on, 99.9% of them were bad. Not bad as in, because we're all human, we're going to make mistakes, we're going to treat people a certain way, all relationships are not going to work out. Like, so this isn't me saying that as if to say that I'm saying, oh, all men are, I'm just saying that the experiences that I had caused a mistrust for men. Growing up in a household where I was being molested, and those men were, were the men in my family. Hope, and I don't want to put it out there like I'm bashing my family, but this is something that happens all across the world, and not just in the Black culture. But this is just to allow you to understand that me as another woman, and I know that men have had stories of very similar. For the ones that you've heard, I'm sure there's a million that you have not heard. And I'm not a expert. I don't have a degree in psychology or to help people. Haven't took any trainings or anything that would allow me to stand in a position to tell anyone anything about how they should feel, how they should process. The only thing that I have learned was how to maintain that emotion in a very positive way so that it didn't follow me around for the rest of my life. And I'm still coming out of it because I've learned how to manage it better. And I started wearing the straight hair, which wasn't natural to my own. And my natural hair doesn't have this kind of volume, and it isn't as thick. So I don't dislike my hair. I don't have a hatred for my hair. And I've always worn braids just when I stopped wearing tracks, which didn't look like the texture of my natural hair by any stretch of the imagination. If I was born, and even though as a Black woman, if my hair, didn't have a tight coil and all of that, and I wore tracks, it's whatever. I even saw a video where a woman was explaining, it was a narrative. A woman was explaining that Africans used to wear wigs way, way back in the day, or something to that effect. I don't know if that's true or not true, but so, it's whatever. So there's a book that I read called Why Black Men Love White Women. And when I say that title to some people, that title can kind of throw you off because it can be a little bit deceptive. But when I read it, it just talked about the residuals of racism. The gentleman who wrote it was a comedian. I don't know if he still is, but I haven't heard his name or seen any videos, so I'll just say was. And his name is Rashid something. And I'll have to go back online and buy the book again because I no longer have the original book in my possession. But what I do know is that book taught me a lot about how I related to Black people in general, and I did not understand what it is that I was doing, meaning if I was in an environment where I was with other Black people, I didn't realize that, I didn't speak to them like I realized that whatever was, I just noticed my behavior, and how I was dealing with it. Now I still have a lot of problems in the area in regards to women, but I'm trying to work on that as best as possible. And it's not easy. It's just a very difficult, one of the more difficult things. And I tend to, I'm able to, I feel, it's easier for me to talk to gentlemen, and I'm trying to dissect that as well, meaning just normal conversation. And I took it upon myself to understand how I grew up, the things that I went through in my childhood, how all of that affected my thought process, who I was, the trust in people and or the lack thereof, how I related to people, just everything about me and how I operated. And so one of the things that I do want to say is, for me, I had to understand who I was in any given, I had to understand who I was in any given experience or situation, and who I am in any moment. And that dictates how I'm going to handle the situation emotionally. And so there was a quote that said, it's the intent behind what you do things that determine the outcome. And so with me still struggling to, and I want to say get it right. I don't mean get it right as into trying to be perfect, because I have no desire to be. I have no desire to emulate and or be a Michelle Obama. She's, an amazing woman with excellent accomplishments, but I don't feel a pressure to emulate her or any other woman. I don't feel a pressure to morph into something that isn't me based on my experience. Michelle Obama grew up a certain way, and so that's a product of her. And everybody is a product that may not look like their childhood, meaning I have a sister who is very accomplished and educated and smart and all of those amazing things. She's beautiful. She looks great for her age. And based on how we grew up, no one would have been able to guess that is what she would have, where she is now is what she would have become. Just like you have people that grew up in affluent and excellent homes, and you see a lot of stars who have children that are maybe drug addicted or have a lot of emotional problems, and they had money and two parents. So there's really no way to gauge how someone will develop. There's just no way, which makes it very difficult to kind of toss out a blanketed opinion or a thought process onto everyone, because there are too many different variables in people's lives and experiences to be able to, if I say something to you in regards to my situation and I say, well, this is what you should do, and all, no, you just can't do it, because for anything that happens, there'll always be an exception. And for all the stories you hear, there are a lot of stories that you will not hear. And so me trying to learn myself and who I was in the world was the hardest process that I've ever had to go through. Very difficult to see yourself in situations. Very difficult to navigate a world that's given you so many different ideas and things about who you are and who you should be and how you should think, and if you have an opinion about something that people don't agree with, they want to just tear you apart, like you've been thrown into a lion's den. And me having a false image of what beauty was, and me being conditioned as a young girl in the United States, with all images saying that straight hair and lighter skin and all of those things meant that I wasn't a human being or worthy, because somebody else said, this is what you ought to look like and be in order to be accepted. And so one of the things that I learned about acceptance was, as I began to grow and I began to read, and I read the book Why Black Men Love White Women, and how the author articulated how Black people relate to each other, and Black women and Black men, and our relationships being destroyed by a number of things that we could go on about, but has been said a million times in videos and books by our ancestors and so forth. So there's nothing that I can tell you that wouldn't be something that someone hasn't already said to you here on YouTube or any other platform in regards to, the delicate and complicated thing of the Black community and so forth. And so I felt like that of all of the things that I could have read and all of the information that was out there for me to understand how to begin to look at myself as someone who was amazing and glorious just simply because I'm a human being first, and not allow a culture that, you know, wanted to destroy me and the content, and I say me as in all Black people, and the content of who we were, our accomplishments and inventions and the things that we've done. And, you know, even when I learned that the Tennessee whiskey, that a slave is the one who taught the gentleman who now, or, you know, that company, all of that comes with the Tennessee whiskey, that a Black man is the one who taught a slave master how to do the process. Do you know what I mean? When I learned that ice hockey was actually invented by Black slaves, I want to say it wasn't Chicago, or you know, just the things that you learn, and how when you don't know who you are, it's easy for someone to present something to someone else when they don't know the origin, and have that be taken from you. So when you don't know your history, it is very detrimental to not know those things, because then you'll never know what your contribution is, and people will always look at you as if you're nothing when they don't really know that part of the reason why we live in the country that we do, that people of color had a very, 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 we were like soil, you know. Without soil, certain things couldn't grow. And those are things that, you know, once I learned that, I just became very proud of the fact that I came from people that actually did contribute and were innovative and were amazing, and that when I began to realize, like my natural hair doesn't have the thickness, it doesn't have this kind of volume. I have very thin strands and a lot of shrinkage, like a lot of Black women. But whenever I wear my hair out natural, it would be big. It just wasn't this dense. It would be big. But by the end of the day, as massive as it would be, it would be tangled. I would be in the mirror trying to comb it because the ends would have gotten in there and started playing, and just having a great time in it, and it was tangled, and so and I hated having to comb it at the end, because then I would be pulling my hair out because it would just get so tangled by the end of the day. And I realized that the natural texture of my hair just simply, even though I loved my fro, I realized that I might not be able to wear it. I might have to relax it just a bit, because no matter what I did to it when I wore it out, no matter if I put shea butter or anything, by the time I went to bed, I'd be in there just tugging, because the ends would have just gotten so tangled that I'd end up breaking my hair off. And I tried everything. And so one of the things I learned was that even though it could be difficult, I just began wearing braids until it got into a certain length. And it took me a long time to learn how to take care of my hair. I had to understand and appreciate that my hair grew in the direction of the sun naturally, that my hair was not dead, that the sun did, that my hair, my hair was able to soak up that vitamin D from the sun, and that there was nothing wrong with having kinky hair. And so then I started, researching Black people and all the things that were going on in the culture and how we got where we were, and it made me even more proud. And every time I would go out into the world, I began to be stronger and to look at myself as an amazing woman who did not have to look at another woman who had lighter skin or just straight hair. And I didn't have to look at that and be envious and say, oh, I wish that I, had hair like that, when there was a time when I did. And I remember that Black women would, be perming their hair until it was super straight. And there's nothing wrong with it, just nothing wrong with it. But what I realized was, over a period of time, they started to lose their hair because the chemical would get on their scalp, and it, when you put when women's hair would start to thin, and my hair started to thin because when I was perming it or doing things to it, I was told that chemical gets into, I don't know if they call it the hair follicle or not, the shaft, but when your hair is growing out of your head, it inflames the scalp. It kind of burns it and it inflames it, and it causes the pores to kind of shrink a bit. And so you don't have the mass after a while. That's why our hair sometimes will get thinner. And so I had to understand that, Danita, well, first of all, how amazing is it that you can cornrow your hair? How amazing is it that you can put braids in your hair? How amazing is it that if I wanted my hair straight to my shoulder, all I had to do was take a flat iron and flat iron it, and I can wear straight hair, braids. I could put this in and my hair was strong enough to hold it. That my hair was beautiful because it was so versatile. That now, you see women who have straight hair by nature because they may be white or Hispanic or what have you, and they now are wearing braids in their hair. And that when we were told or made to feel some sort of type of way about who we were as a culture and as a race and the things that we did, that those things are now emulated, and that sometimes people don't hate you. Maybe they just might be envious of who you are. And so it's easy. It's like a man who's married to a woman, and he really just kind of hates women, period. He hates himself. And so he uses her as, or if a woman is also abusive to a man, or if a friend is abusive to another friend, because we all know that emotional abuse doesn't just happen between a man and a woman, and it isn't always physical. It happens in all kinds of relationships. But that, so you tell me, oh, there's something wrong with you because your lips are full and you this, that, and the other. But come to find out, it's not that there was ever anything wrong with it. It's just that it just wasn't you. And I had to wake up one day and realize that the structure of who I was amazing. The fact that Africans were able to stand out in the sun all day long and pick cotton and not get cancer because their skin protected the inside of who they are, that brown, beautiful skin, that there was a gland that controlled that there were so many things about the gland that we had that controlled our melanin, that was actually a gift and not a curse. So I said all of that to say that, as you grow, learning that, I had to see that as something that was beautiful and amazing and not a negative thing, and had to understand that as we are moving about as Black women, that we don't have to be ashamed of who we are innately, and how researching the things that they say was a negative thing, and found out that they were all actually gifts, extremely beautiful, that they were something that was given to us based on the continent that our people came from, and just knowing that you can't allow someone else to dictate who you are. You can allow someone else to dictate how you feel. You can allow someone else to dictate, how you get up and move. And every time someone, makes you try and feel some sort of type of way, use that as just another drop of gasoline to set you on fire, to just become bigger and better. And so the more pain and the more hatred and the more things that I endured and I felt, and that people threw my way and or throw my way, it just makes me stronger. It doesn't deter or distract from who I know I am. And the more solidified you are in who you are, there's this joy that just illuminates from your spirit and your soul that nobody can take. Not a look, not anything. It just will bounce off of you like you have a shield. And so who you are in any given moment in the world, in any situation, will dictate that outcome. There is nothing that anybody can take from you unless you allow them to have it, unless there's a seed that allows you to believe it. And because we are bombarded as a women about so many things about who we are, and even as Black women, and I'll get into that in another video, that what I began to learn, even too, about my natural hair, which is, I used to watch videos, and I ruined my hair once, listening to, get all of these oils and, mix them and put them all on your hair. And, there'd be a girl, she had like long, luscious hair, and my hair was growing really well, right? And there was nothing wrong with it. I had a process that I used. And that process was, I only used African black soap, not the refined kind in the box, but the clumpy, soap. I watched how it was made, how the African women make it, like in this huge bowl, and, the leaves and stuff, and the stuff they put in it. It has health and healing properties. I only washed my hair with that. I would rinse it out. I used extra virgin olive oil, vitamin E caplets, and shea butter, and I would melt all that down and mix it. I would do an egg and mayonnaise treatment. My stepsister used to do that to her hair when we were children, and we used to laugh and make jokes and thought it was really weird, but it actually works. I would condition my hair with that, rinse it out, not wash it out, but just rinse it out really, really well. Excuse me, and I would apply the vitamin E caplet, the shea butter, and the stuff. I'd plait it down and let it dry naturally. And when I would wash my hair, I would part it in fours, and I would wash one section at a time, because I heard a woman say when I would wash my hair initially, it would tangle up like really, really bad. So a lady said that if you have naturally kind of kinky hair, you're not supposed to wash it all out at once when you go like to the braid salon and they just throw your hair and use like this cheap Suave shampoo, and you wash it and they're just raking through it. I had to realize that I had to wash my hair in sections, and I would do one plait at a time, and I would pour I would use the African black soap. I'd put it in like a container, like a spray container, or that has a squeeze bottle. Half of it with the soap, the other half with water, shake it, and it would lather so well, and it would detangle my hair in the process of me washing it. But I will only wash one section at a time. While it was plaited, I would put the soap on it and rub my hands and then work it out, and it would just slip through my fingers. And so I had put all this oil on my hair one time, and it made my hair coarse and brittle, and it broke off. And what I didn't know was the girl on the video had thick, luscious hair, and her hair shaft was very thick. I had very thin. So my hair could not absorb all of that oil as opposed to hers could. So when you're looking at these videos and these women are saying, this is what you do, this is what you do, remember, all of our hair is unique. I have very thin strands. My hair grows better when I put less on it. Every woman cannot look at a video and mimic something that someone else is doing, because your hair isn't her hair. You don't know if you have low porosity. You don't know if your hair needs more vitamin D. We all need something different. And one time I even mixed carrot juice, and I think it was a little bit of beet. I juiced beets and a little bit of that, and shook it up, and I sprayed it, and my hair just grew like it just loved it. So I said that to say that once I began to learn many things about my hair and me and my skin, and loved being brown, and loved having high cheekbones, and my lips are full, and just having the kinky hair, in which if I wanted straight hair, all I had to do was flat iron it. If I wanted to wear my hair in a bush, I could. If I wanted to wear cornrows. So those things allowed me to just love me more, and to understand that I didn't have to fight. Back when I was younger, I used to try and be perfect. Everything was perfect. They told me I talk too much, or you don't talk enough. And, nobody wanted, when I used to go to school, I was always the last one picked for the team. All of these things damaged me. And I walked around with that until I came to this realization that I had every right to be who I was, that I had to find all the things that made me beautiful as a black woman. I had to research my history and find out that we were actually very amazing, beautiful people. There's just so many things that I had to go through in order to not allow what somebody else told me about me being defective and undeserving. I had to toss that, because I realized, honey, that's your perception. I don't have to drink that, eat that, or own that. That'll be my decision as to whether or not I'll allow you or anyone else to decide me, or how I'm going to feel about myself. And so whoever you are in it will determine everything. It doesn't mean your life is going to be perfect. It doesn't mean that things will always work out. Doesn't mean you won't still get hate. It means none of that. It just means that who you are in the midst of that situation will determine the joy that you will experience, or the lack thereof. That every day when you get up, you got two choices. You can choose joy, or you can choose defeat. And choosing joy doesn't mean that you won't have a fucking crappy day. And I don't mean a crappy day like you go through it and you absorb what's happening in a very personal way. but that in the midst of it, it's crappy, but you can still smile and have a great time. And that when someone looks at you because they don't like whatever it is, honey, that ain't for you. Because the stronger you becoming who you are, the less likely you will be affected by the shit that'll be, pardon my French, by the mess that'll be thrown at you in life. I believe you are to be good to people. And you live your life the way you feel like, everybody has a different way. But as I continue to move on and go through with little bits and pieces, part of me is just only here to give some woman or some man, anyone who's listening, if you are struggling with who you are, I can only tell you what I did to come to a place in my soul in which I have to make sure that I have a certain amount of peace and being comfortable with who I am. And women, before I go in this video, I want to say that, and I'll delve into the dating thing in another video, is that as a woman, we are going to be bombarded with so many different things about what we do, how we do it, and stuff like that. And I'm not going to go into too much because it could be a very tricky subject. And because we're all different, what I say may not fit somebody else's situation. But just to say that you're going to have to take accountability for what's happening when it comes to dating. And I'm going to say this, there is a young lady on YouTube, and I'm probably not going to do this very often. I do like, reaction videos and stuff like that. But the purpose of me saying it is not to bash her. It's just that I want women, like, she's talking about a situation in which a guy had, I guess he misled her and all of these things. And I want to be more specific, but I'm not. But what I would have wanted her to tell women is this. There are a lot of things that was said that puzzled me, because even at the time, early on during that time frame when she had the videos up, she articulated the kind of woman that she was. And then you end up in a certain situation that doesn't match what you said or who you were. And we've all been subject to do that. So please just bear with me for a moment. When the situation was over, she was articulating he. And yes, granted, you have a lot of men and women who will mislead a person, hands down, and they're absolutely responsible for that. And because, we know there are situations when you watch like the ID channel and you have a woman that met a man and, he was deceptive, and she met his friends and his family, and they were married for 10 years and he did everything right, and she went through his phone. Everything was always great. And one day he just comes up missing and found out he has, there are these rare situations in which there would have been no way that you would have been able to predict what would have happened. That is a given. We've all been bamboozled, and there really wasn't a sign. Nobody can say that there was. But overwhelmingly, we are in situations in which we see things that we don't look at. In some situations, after a period of time, the blessing came out of it. In other times, you realize that you should have left. Those situations are very difficult because every situation has too many different elements and variables that may or may not dictate that the end result is going to be the same for all. Nobody can say that because you just don't know every situation. I'm getting ready to sneeze. But, excuse me. But please know that in this situation with this young lady, I understand that we all get into situations where we wish we would have made better choices. We're caught up in an emotion. We are all subject to being human. We are all subject to being in a situation where we wish we had made a better choice. Just many, 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 many things that we wish that we could change. And we said, damn, I knew I shouldn't have done that. We're human, right? If it didn't affect your life in such a catastrophic way, or you lose your job or something, it's not that serious, because at the end of the day, shit's gonna happen, Take it for what it is, grow from it, and move on. But what frustrated me about the situation was, instead of you saying to the women, listen, let me tell you, if you're ever in a situation in which you have a lot of money and you are established and you are in a certain position, and maybe you don't have the mental or emotional capability, you might be able to handle your business or your businesses, but maybe you're not in a position emotionally where, because otherwise you wouldn't have been in this situation, in which experience would have dictated to you at what point you pull out and you come out of the emotion. Because I have a thing I made up saying that being emotional is like being drunk. You cannot make a rational decision in the midst of it. And not everybody who's drinking alcohol makes irrational decisions. No, that's not what I'm saying. And everybody that's emotional, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying more often than not, women in relationships, and I know men do it as well, but we're not talking about men at this moment in terms of when you begin to experience a relationship and stuff starts going downhill. As a woman, you have to understand that there is a moment in which you have to remove yourself from the emotion, because the emotion can allow you to stay in something that is toxic, that is unhealthy, and that you shouldn't be in. And some situations come out in a positive way. Sometimes whatever that tough thing was in the beginning, sometimes it does turn out right. But just make sure that you maintain, don't allow whatever it is that you're in cause you to be unemployed or homeless or anything that will change your life from something that you cannot recover, because we're all in a position in which we can, get it caught up in an emotion or because we're human. But my answer to that is, make sure that whatever you're in doesn't cause you to be destitute. Make sure that you don't allow this man to spend every dime you have and then you're homeless. Make sure you don't end up in a situation that you can't recover from. Why? Because we're human beings. We're all bound to get caught up. I call it getting shanked. You can get shanked sometime. Somebody is going to hurt you. You can't avoid it. Everything is a risk. Everything is a risk when you're doing investments. Every time you get in your car and drive down the road, you're risking someone running into you. Like, there are just too many things in the world that you cannot predict. And sometimes, Iyanla Vanzant said it, and I've said this to many people. There was a clip of her show, and she was talking to a young lady, and she said, you have to trust yourself enough to know that you can get over it. So the more you build who you are as a woman, the more experience you have under your belt, because you're going to get into some situations. Oh man, I should have saw that coming. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. But as long as you don't consistently repeat that, as long as you're in a situation and you're dealing with some stuff that's kind of like, I should have pulled out earlier, but you kind of wait and see, just make sure that you maintain some sort of space in which it doesn't affect you, other than, okay, I might have my feelings hurt, I may cry for a month, I may stop dating for a year, but have everything else in your life to stay intact. And I'm only saying that because I'm not going to get on here and throw some blanketed stuff out like it applies to all women in all situations, because I've had some situations that you would have never thought would have passed B ended up at Z. But someone else's situation, it didn't work, and as a girl, I can't tell you that. The only thing that I know that I did is I tried to be sure that whatever I was dealing with didn't affect my livelihood. And this particular woman, the only thing that I didn't like was I felt like, now that she's grown, hopefully that when she sees that something coming again, she won't be afraid to love and open up her heart, but she also won't allow this person to put her in a situation in which she has depleted all of who she is and the money that she's made, trying into a situation that clearly in the beginning, once you become wise, you would have known was going nowhere. And I don't mean wasn't going anywhere as if a person doesn't have potential, but there is a point in which, if you're looking at your bank account and you realized you had $4 million, and then you look up and one day you have 500,000, you're thinking, yeah, so something is happening here that doesn't make sense. All I'm saying is, as a woman from one woman to another, look at what it is that you did. Say, you know what, I shouldn't have did that. You know what, I shouldn't have did this. Because even though I can put blame on this man, I have to look at what I did, because the decisions that I made weren't wise. And if I was dealing with someone who wasn't mature enough or smart enough, or who I knew wasn't in a position, educational wise, experience wise, to handle or understand what I've built, and I knew this person didn't have the tools, I knew that, and I allow this person to come in and make decisions based on a lack of knowledge, a lack of experience, and a lack of education. That wasn't his fault. That's like giving a 3-year-old a hammer and say, go build a wall, and saying, well, I'm hoping, I'm thinking. So my thing is that as a woman, all I'm going to tell you is this is what I did wrong. If you see this, I'm not saying that your situation is going to turn out the same way, sis. What I'm telling you is be smart enough to separate the emotion from what you actually see. Look at something for what it is. If you say, I love this person, I think he has potential, but he doesn't have a, then no, okay, well, I may try and help him, but I'm not going to allow him to balance my checkbook or whatever. So look at what it is that you did that was wrong and say, ladies, don't do this. I'm not going to necessarily knock him, because if he wasn't in the know, if I can articulate that he wasn't the smartest and I knew he didn't have this, that, and the other, why would I allow him in a position that caused me to be destitute, already knowing that he wasn't in a mental or any other kind of position to help that grow, but to deplete it? Because then that doesn't make sense. And so you tell the woman that these are the things that you may need to watch. This is what you don't do. And that when you start to see something, you may still try to keep the emotional encouragement and the building of this man. But what you don't do is don't allow him to make decisions that could cause what it is that you've built to be depleted. Do you know what I mean? Like, understand that the same way he didn't know, you didn't know. If you want someone to be empathetic about your lack their knowledge and then you have to grow, you can't look at someone else and say, oh, he, because in the end, remember, at that moment, you were smarter than him. Remember, you were more savvy than him. You knew more, but you knew that. And you made a decision to hand over a certain amount of your power and what you had and what you built to someone that you already articulated that wasn't in a position to know how to manage any of that. And so if you don't look at yourself in that, then you can't just sit and say, just say, I made a bad choice and this is what I should have done, because if he didn't know, then he didn't know. And so, you know, we have to be very careful as women about how we approach situations with men, and understanding that we have to have a thought process. We have to understand what we should and shouldn't be doing, because that's what we have to do in order to continue to make sure that we don't lose what could keep us from potentially, you know, continuing to have our lives if the situation doesn't work out. Because everything isn't going to work out. Every situation wasn't meant to be, we're going to go on the ground together. That may not be what it was meant to be in every situation. So I'm going to end this video now. I'm going to get myself together because I'd like to go out for today. But I'll see you guys at another time. And thanks for watching.